Was I about to have a panic attack in one of the worst places possible? Adrenaline was rushing through my body. I could feel my heart racing. I felt paralyzed on the spot, going hot and cold. I had pins and needles through my fingers. I felt nausea coming and going, making me feel dizzy, like I was going to be sick at any moment, which for me was my worst nightmare, because the thought of being powerless and out of control in public terrified me. What made it worse was the thought of people judging me and being disgusted by me if I was sick. That was something I just couldn't experience. And yet it felt like it was going to happen at any moment, like it was imminent. And here's what I did. You see, in a moment of madness, I decided to try and beat my travel anxiety phobia with a trip to New York flying on my own. What was I thinking? And I wanted to use a technique I'd been exploring to see if it would help me get there. In hindsight, I could have practiced a technique a lot more to make it more natural, which is what I'm going to encourage you to do, because it will help you rewire your brain to deal with anxiety as it happens. And you can use this for any type of negative experience, including urges and cravings, which is quite unique, but also quite wonderful at the same time. But at that moment in Gatwick Airport, I was sat there opposite W.H. Smith's, and I was being terrorized by negative thoughts and negative feelings, doing everything they could to get me to leave Gatwick Airport, to get out of there. I had one set of thoughts screaming at me that I had to leave, that I had to try and find an excuse to get my baggage off of the plane because I was now at the departure lounge. And I had another part of me saying, you've got to go, you can do this, you will be embarrassed and ashamed if you don't. And it was creating a huge battle, which was making it feel much worse. So there I was sat there looking at the magazines, just thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And then I began to use the technique I'm about to share with you. But first, let me explain how anxiety works in a way of a wave model, very quickly, very simply. And then I'll show you what I did. Because anxiety comes in waves, as you may well know. First of all, first wave will be the thought and the feeling, which comes out of nowhere. You didn't bring them on, you didn't make them happen, they just happen. And then you get wave two, and that's your response to wave one. And interestingly enough, and I want you to remember this, wave one isn't the problem. It really, really isn't. Your perception of wave one, that thought and feeling, your relationship with it is what determines what I call wave two. Wave two is your response. So for me, it's flight, get out of there. Avoidance, distraction, a bit of freeze, I'm paralyzed, I'm not sure what to do, but then it leads to let's just get out of there. For other people, there might be a fight situation and they'll fight their thoughts, they'll fight their feelings, and they'll get angry and frustrated with themselves. There's another term called fawn. I can't remember the psychologist who termed it, but so put them in the details below if you know. But there's a fawn response which just goes into people-pleasing mode. So you've got freeze, fight, flight, fawn. Mine is flight. So I wanted just to get out of there, and I'll do anything I can to make that happen if I let anxiety have its way. So wave one, thought, feeling. Wave two is your response. Wave three is if I had let anxiety win and I had gone home, the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment is part of wave three, as is the fear that it will happen again. Yet living in fear of fear is wave three. To do something different, you can't do anything about wave one. Wave one will just happen, but you can change your relationship with it by interrupting it with an ABC technique. An ABC is accept, breathe, and choose. Accepting your thoughts and feelings is really hard, especially when you're in full-on anxiety mode. And in that moment in the airport, I'll show you what I did to make it much easier for myself. I've been studying mindfulness, so I was aware that thoughts are not real. They're not reality, they're illusions. And you can begin with practice to begin to separate yourself from your thoughts. The closer you are to your thoughts, the realer they become. So in that moment, I accepted how I felt, accepted my thoughts, that they were catastrophizing, I was going to lose control on the plane, I was going to be ill, and people were going to look at me in disgust, all of those sorts of thoughts. And what I did to make it easier through acceptance was just let the thoughts be there. They're very close to me in my visual field, by the way, which is a hypnotic technique your brain will use to try to make you go into wave 2, your response mode. So what I did was gently move the thoughts away from me. Imagine them just moving away so that the thoughts become a little bit smaller, but there was some space between myself and the actual thought. And by doing that, there was some breathing room. And that breathing room gave me a slightly different perspective on, this thought is just a thought, isn't it? It's just there telling me that I'm going to have a terrible time, that I'm going to panic, and it's all going to go horribly wrong. But that space gave me that change in perspective to begin to see it as an illusion. By breathing slow and low, triggering the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms your mind and body down, the thought also began to feel less real, or series of thoughts for me at the time. So accepting, not interfering, not trying to change it, maybe getting a little bit of room, but gently, not too quick, because if you resist your thoughts, by the way, they persist and become stronger. You're telling your brain there's a problem with the thought. By letting it be there and just moving it gently away, we're creating a level of acceptance because you're still wanting to look. Breath, slow and low. C, choose. I chose to label this thought as just travel anxiety, and it will pass soon. And the mere thought of choice, the mere illusion of it, the mere fact that we have choice is a way of getting your smart brain to become more dominant, to become back online. Because when we go into anxiety mode, your survival brain takes over and your smart brain steps back, because that's how we evolved. We don't want to be too analytical with a moment of danger that may not be in our best interest. So again, in a moment of anxiety, your survival brain is meant to be online and your smart brain stepping back. But that's for physical danger. And I wasn't in physical danger in Gatwick Airport. So just by allowing the thoughts to be there, breathing into them and choosing to label, my smart brain was becoming more dominant, lighting up like a Christmas tree. And just by beginning to lower the thought a little, making it shrink, making it smaller, I began to see the thought for what it was. Complete illusion. No matter what thought appeared in my mind, I just moved it gently away and I allowed it to become a bit smaller. And that changed my experience of anxiety in that moment forever, because there I was in the worst case scenario. I felt like I couldn't get out of it now. I had to get on that flight, and I wanted to get on it in a much calmer state. Now, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say this ABC technique suddenly changed all of that and I skipped onto the flight without a care in the world. That didn't happen. But what I began to notice happening was the more I kept these thoughts there, and they become a lot smaller, the more bored I became of them. My mind became quite distracted. I wanted to go and look in the shops. I wanted to go and do something else because these thoughts were quite dull. And again, I continued. I forced myself to keep looking at the thoughts, kept bringing them back. And there became this resistance of, I'm not going to show you these thoughts now. I'm not going to bring these thoughts into your mind. They became very fuzzy, very see-through. I could hardly see them whatsoever at all. And then eventually, they began to just disappear, became really difficult to think about. And then I became that bored, I began to wander around the shops. That for me is groundbreaking, because normally I'll be sat there, just before I was traveling anywhere, kind of paralyzed and hypnotized by the whole experience, trying to get out of it, doing anything I can to get out of it, which was normally my sort of next course of action. But here I was, knowing I could get on that flight now. And I knew that the technique, even though it wasn't the easiest thing to do at that moment, was working. What also was groundbreaking for me, by the way, was I felt a little bit hungry, which for me, with that power of nausea, the level of nausea that I normally felt, I wouldn't eat for such a long time, which made me feel much worse, of course, when I was traveling. And now there I was in Gatwick Airport looking for something to eat. And that for me was a huge turnaround in what normally happened for me. And it's very easy to let your anxiety symptoms overwhelm you and your thoughts overwhelm you, because that's a normal part of the anxiety experience, your survival response. And let me just remind you that anxiety is a completely normal response for how most of you are forcing yourselves to live. It's unsustainable. And what can help you accept your anxiety a little more is the change in perception that anxiety is happening for you, not to you. I know that can be difficult, and you've got to be gentle with this, because I don't know your circumstances, but be open to it at least. That what is anxiety asking you to do? Is it asking you to look at unhealed trauma? Your mindset? Is it asking you to look at your lifestyle? Are you living in a way which puts extraordinary amount of pressure on your nervous system? And of course, your true self is begging you now through anxiety, almost like it's knocking at your door, to say, "What? This can't continue. You can't live like this, because it will take you down a very dark path. Your nervous system and body can't handle this. Can you change?" That's what anxiety is asking you to do. Can you change? And again, just by being open to that, you may begin to look at some of your habits, the way that you're living, your mindset. Have you got something that needs to be dealt with? Are you living with purpose? Are you lonely? Are you, living in a way which is not great nutrition-wise, hydration-wise? Are you not exercising? All the basics. What is it that anxiety is saying? If you change this, your life will increase, as in regards to quality. Your life quality will increase. So again, accepting that anxiety is happening for you can begin to change your relationship with it. And again, remember the breath work and then choosing. And I also like a little reframe, by the way, something that I didn't have at the time, because this is a long time ago, but another way of reframing travel anxiety as an example is, this is just travel adrenaline. Anxiety is pretty similar to fear physiologically. So it's very easy to interpret your symptoms as always anxiety, when it could be excitement too. So I hope you found this useful in regards to beginning to change your experience of your thoughts and your feelings, which can overwhelm you when it comes to feeling anxious. And something that I would add to this is, I have created on my Patreon channel, and I'll put the link in the notes, is a series of 5-minute meditations, 5 to 8 minutes, for people who say, "I can't meditate, I just can't do that," because the ego isn't letting you, basically. But when you just begin with 5 minutes, just listening to the sound of my voice, just guide you through a simple meditation, you can begin to build up those pathways. And why is that important? Because the more you begin to train your mind to calm down quickly and easily, the more you begin to rewire your mind to think differently about yourself, your reality, and to connect to deeper levels within you, that also can help you change your anxiety experience. And it just takes 5 minutes. And I had a client here yesterday who loves those 5-minute exercises. And they were telling me that this is not for them, first of all. Meditation is not for them. They just can't do it. And now they're asking for longer meditations. They can feel the peace, the relaxation, the joy, the emotional connection that comes with doing something so short and simple. So they are on this channel as well, some of them, but there's a whole collection on Patreon, which you can begin to explore. The link can be down below. So I hope you found this video really useful. ABC. Yeah, the minute you begin to accept your anxiety and change your relationship with it is the moment your anxiety will begin to change forever. But it's a process, so be gentle with it. And you won't always be successful, but it's something that with each step will get easier over time. Again, and use breath work to begin to practice nervous system regulation, just calming your mind and body down to make it easier to deal with those thoughts and feelings. And then choose your response. Choose how you want to work with anxiety. I coach lots of different choices in regards to how to work with what you've got going on in that moment. So again, thank you for all of your comments. I've been answering as many as I possibly can. So if you do have any questions, put them down below. Please subscribe. Please follow, do whatever you want with the, to make sure that you get to see these videos if you have anxiety. And I'll look forward to connecting with you in the very next video soon. Take care. Bye-bye.